decided to move out into the park because it was such a nice day. Anyway, the subject we wanted to cover was having to do with, we just got over seeing a film about parents grieving about the disappearance of a kid, and I was just sort of wondering, just to put it out there, what do you see as far as the steps on dealing with the parents who have to deal with a loss, or family members that have to deal with a loss, anything like that, anything that you've had to work with in your line of dealing with situations like that, or people dealing with the trauma that is involved with that?
Everybody grieves differently, and they don't always follow the steps logically. And I think sometimes those steps are difficult to define, because in her case, it was kind of like mom was trying to help, and it was very difficult for her because it almost made her feel like a child again, and she needed to be alone to formulate what was going on within herself and analyze what she was dealing with as well. So it's like, I really want to be alone. I really want to think about this. I really need to be alone. But she really did need that companionship. She really did need somebody who cared. And she didn't see it in her husband because she didn't understand what he was going through. They weren't married very long. And he was concerned about, how she would interpret how he was responding, if he acted a certain way. Should he become more embracing and compassionate, is what I was seeing, or should he just kind of stay his distance and let her ask for his hug, or I need a hug from you kind of a thing, versus him saying, honey, I love you, I need a hug, I'm having problems with this myself, because he wasn't really sharing initially in that area. He felt males have a tendency to feel that they have to be the strong partner, and to be tough and ready and not show any emotions and not cry. So it makes it very difficult for them to know how to respond to a woman, where on the other hand, normally, and there are women that have that strong appearance as well, are more sobbing and crying and emotional, versus where she was more looking like she was kind of reverting to being in her childhood, and she was having a headache. She was holding a lot of things within her, and she was not at a point where she could really talk about it. She just couldn't understand why he was not interacting with her and sharing with him and giving her compassion and talking about it, which would allow her to open up.
How long do you think of a process, and it's going to be different for everybody,
right,
when you're dealing with a situation where a child has disappeared for whatever reason, and there seems to be no results going on, but they have to put their lives together, and that was sort of the idea on there. What are the sort of steps that a person or a couple or whatever kind of ends up going through in dealing with that kind of stuff?
Like you said, I think every couple is different. I think a couple who isn't traumatized, and which is exactly what you are. It's just like when you get in a car accident, you're pretty much in shock. And if somebody asks you what happened, you're really blanked out. And sometimes it doesn't come back to you until later on. So that's basically what you're going through, is a traumatization of an experience, going through your mind, analyzing, trying to figure out what happened, how could we have done it better. Then also you have the people that are going to go out there and say, you know what, I'm going to look. I'm going to try to find out what's going on. Police aren't doing anything. I'm going to do it myself. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing, because it may be a lot more complicated than you realize. I mean, there have been children that have been kidnapped, and they were like only a block away, and that was at my imagination. And why didn't I look? I could have found my child. It's a difficult thing to put your finger on, Alien abduction, who knows what it was? Got lost in the woods? It's very difficult. Was it a bear that took them away? Was it you fell in the water? Was it, what should I have done? Would it have been a better mother if I would have had my hand on them all the time instead of playing on my, phone, which a number of people are doing now. What did I do wrong? And it's going to be a long process to go through that, because when you're going through it, you're probably basically everyday occasion, nothing's going to happen. Why would I would even never thought something like that would ever happen. And then the kid's gone. It's in the back seat of the car, left the car door open, just ran in the store for a minute, and the child's gone. That's really horrible. You know, that's a very difficult thing to deal with. Because that, especially with a woman who carries that child within them all that time, you're really bonded with that entity. And the closeness is a very difficult thing to let go of. And if the person, in the old days, many times they would just say, well, let's just have another kid. It's like saying, just buy another dog. It doesn't replace how you feel. It doesn't make the pain go away. You can have a stiff upper lip and block it all you want to, but you never get over it. It's just like a death. You never really get over the grieving. That feeling is still there. It can always come back and surface.
Do you have you worked with a lot of people that it doesn't necessarily have to be with a kid that's gone or a family member that's gone, but have you worked with a lot of people that are suffering from various different kinds of traumas? And
I think our lives in general touch with people who have gone through traumas of different kinds, whether you're talking about people passing away or animals passing. There are many things that I think we pretty much live in a society for years, and we're finally starting to reach the point where we're recognizing we need to deal with these things. It's not something we can keep pushing down. You know, we're a lot more complicated than what we've believed in years. We're more spiritual, we're more sensitive, we're more evolved, and we're more willing to deal with it. I mean, you can't just replace another body with another body. The body is not just a body. There's a soul, and you can have two people that look identical, and not just necessarily twins. We all have twins, and there are many people that look like us. The entity inside that body isn't necessarily the same personality or spirit, but the bonding, the closeness you get with that soul is so hard to replace, because you're so in tune with each other. You so really become one as an entity. Your sensitivity of how that person feels and the emotions they have are so wrapped up. It's not something you can just say, oh, well, there's another one, you know? Like, for instance, I knew a gentleman once, and he used to feed this squirrel peanuts every day, and he would call it Jack, you know, and he would feel it, and all of a sudden Jack didn't come anymore, and he was kind of broke up because he said, I don't know what's wrong, you know, because he had a bond with Jack. Well, one day Jack came back, but Jack was Jackie now because Jackie had babies. And it was a whole different emotional thing, and it was really, you know, happiness to see this entity again and all the little babies. And it's a bond. It's another soul. It's not just a body. It's not an empty shell, you know, where cardboard box to rip it up and throw it away. It's like, how do I say? Excuse me. Like in the Bible basically says we are omnipresent. God is omnipresent, I should say. God is omnipresent, all places at the same time. So everything is sacred. Even this bench is sacred. We should take care of it. You have a toy and you're a little child, you take care of it. That's respect. That's part of God. We're all part of God. The animals are the same. We're the same. We aren't just nothing just to be used. We're something that is more a part of God. We have a job to do, and it's to interact and care for each other. And with somebody who doesn't follow suit in that type of belief system and takes that entity away from us and does damage to it, or the child is just missing for whatever reason, that's a very big part of our lives that's missing. And then we become put in a situation where we're distracted to forget and to try to put that out of our mind. Or if you're traumatized, if somebody is hurt, a lot of times people just blank things out and How do you say you just don't remember anymore? It's not a good thing.
Have you dealt with people that have been, I don't know if sedated is the word to use, but given medication to get over things?
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah, and that's not a really good thing because the medication causes side effects, and then you give medication with the side effects, and you have other problems. I knew of one psychiatrist who was absolutely wonderful. His methodology of treating people was giving them vitamin B12. And I've also worked in a mental health center day treatment services, and the best kind of therapy was teaching them how to do social dancing. They were having fun. And I'm talking about people who had some major problems and major medication problems, and it made them laugh and relax and things that are normal. And don't be pointing fingers and calling them mentally ill or anything like this. But we're getting off the subject. The fact of the matter is medication is not necessarily going to resolve the problem. I don't believe in behavioral psychology as much as I believe in reflection, meaning the person has to be able to get over the issue and talk about it. And medication often masks it rather than allows it to come out naturally and talk about it. I would suppose there may be some rare occasions where it may be necessary, but I prefer the effect of a person being able to share and talk and reflect and feel their feelings and deal with them. And many of these things that are people that are sensitive might be able to get more in tune with this person than somebody who is very deadbeat and just reading from the book kind of a script of what to do, what not to do. Because you can't help someone unless you're really bonding with them or interacting with them and feeling what they're feeling, reflecting with them. Not sympathy, but empathy and understanding, so that you can help them deal with it and find other solutions and ways to do it, even if it's looking in newspapers or helping them help themselves to figure out what happened. Does that make sense to you?
have you had to deal with kids on any level that may have gone through some sort of thing, or you just basically deal with adults?
I've dealt with children as well. Some very emotional issues, I would say. I think our society in general needs a lot of help in learning how to deal with children. I think the issue too is that children are really small, big people. They're more intelligent than we think they are. They share very strong emotional experiences with each other like adults do, but when adults come, or all of a sudden they start acting like children again because that's what is expected of them. They can be very, very emotional, very, very powerful, and very, very wise. And unless you give them credit for having that ability and to share and reflect with you, you're not going to see it. And you may misjudge it, misdiagnose it. It may be totally different than what you think it is because your background may not even include the ability of something like that happening. It's quite interesting to meet some of them. I knew a little boy when I was a little girl, and we were sitting on his porch, and he was getting a very heavy discussion. He was telling me how much he loved his little brother, so much that he never wanted to part with him, who happened to be an adopted little boy from Korea, and he was adorable. He says, "No, I mean it. I really, if I could be with him all the time, I would be with him." And we had this little strong discussion, and he kept saying that. So I said, "Well, you could pretend you are not so smart," because he was brilliant. He was getting A's all the time. He says, "But I can't do that. I always get the right answer, and I don't know how to think wrong." I said, "Well, just do the opposite of what's right." That's what he did. Everybody thought he was mentally ill. He had to be pulled back and be at the same age length as his brother was eventually. And then I did tell him at that time, that's going to be a problem sometime, because you're going to have to reverse that, because they're going to think you're really dumb in order to be with him and going forward. So you would have to start answering questions the right way. And that's exactly what he did. So he planned all his life out as a child, what he was going to do in the future, so he could be with his brother. That takes a lot of intelligence. And it was very hard for him to think he would have to say goodbye to him, not be with him when he was the age he was, which was, he must have been about 5, 6 years old. He had to be at least 6, first or second grade. And that's pretty young to be having such a heavy conversation, for him to even plan that out and act that way and reverse it when he got older, so he could be with him then on. That's a lot of strong love, a lot of strong emotion, a lot of strong feelings. I think one of the issues that was noted in the movie is they talked about having another child. And that's not going to resolve the issues of the missing child, because you're always going to look at that face and think about that other child and why you had this child. And you may love this child just as much, but it doesn't resolve or help you get over your pain with that other child. It's not the thing that resolves the issue and problem. So it's a good thing to interact with your spouse or whoever is around you, and ask for a hug, and it's okay to cry, and it's okay to share, and just make sure you find the right emotional component or person you can do that with.